All right. So what we will do is we will try to understand uh, something called noun verb analysis. Okay. So that is where we are going to begin with. So what exactly is this noun verb analysis? First thing is whenever we get a requirement. See, normally when you are working with software, you know, the major the major challenge here is you will have a requirement. So the requirements that we get from the client. So clients basically ask us to build this, to build that, and all, right? So as per the process, already there'll be some business analysts or people like product managers who will understand uh, you know uh, the client's requirements, and then they basically uh, have something called a user story. Correct. So this user story is something that your client would need. So this is the need of our client, right?
Hmm.
And normally, or you can call it as a user story. You heard about this term, right? User stories and all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Under it will
yeah,
be under the Epic. So
yeah.
they will
Correct,
be
correct.
breaking down into chunks of pieces. That is called
Yeah, yeah. So
Epic.
that is totally technical. Let's just stop at the user story. Means, let us say, just to give you an example. So I have a requirement of uh, you know uh, just a simple requirement like this. As a customer, I want to order pizza on the food delivery platform. This is something, uh, you know, sorry, let me disable this. Yeah. So as a customer, I want to order a pizza on the food delivery platform. Is something uh, which is very generic, right? And also, it's pretty straightforward. So as a customer, I want to do this. So whenever you start, Susan, you're able to hear me now? All good?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. So we are just at the beginning, so don't worry. So
Okay, okay.
whenever we have these requirements, so whenever you join a firm as a developer or as a support engineer, it's not like you're working on technology. Means I would say 80% of the time you'll end up working in a support project or some maintenance project. Means, so they are not bad, of course. So projects which are already developed. See, nowadays, developing a project or an application is hardly taking like 5 months. That's it. 5 months, your application is out there. Millions of customers are using it. That is how the development cycle is, right? So I've been worked in a lot of development projects as manager, as a lead, as a developer. So hardly, I think there is no project which extended more than 4 months, which is a development project which is built from the scratch. So you hardly find or end up being a developer in a project which is completely from scratch. It's very hard. There is very less chance. So there are two things here. One, you should be, as a developer or a consultant, you should be in a position to work in a project which is totally from scratch. And the second thing is, you should be in a position to work even if it is an application which is developed like 10 years ago. There are a lot of projects, especially in US or these foreign countries. Nowadays, in India is adapting the technology more faster than other countries. You see a lot of new technologies like these React, Angular, all the mobile platforms like Flutter. These are coming. A lot of firms are now using these, but a lot of banking firms, they're still having legacy platforms. Means the code was written like 10 years ago. We still end up maintaining it. So in those cases, in the second scenario, you need to understand the existing code. You don't need to build anything from the scratch. You don't need to understand the requirements from the code. But the thing is, you need to understand the data structure. That is very important. How is your data built, or how are you going to build the data? Because it's all, take any application, it is all about data. How you are managing the data. Managing the data means how are you creating the information? How are you reading the information, updating it, and deleting it? Right. So these four operations are pretty important. And in order to do these four operations, the first thing is you need to structure it properly. You would have heard data structures is very important. Every interview, the data structures are, being questioned. So take any product company's interview, you'll end up having, questions on this, right? So now we will realize what is the importance of it, and I'll try to make it as simple as possible for you. So let us say I have a requirement like this. Let's go with scenario number one. You're working in a project which is getting built from the scratch. As a customer, I want to order a pizza. This is a requirement given to you by a business analyst or your product manager. Okay. Now you need to develop it as a full stack developer, let's say. So how do you start with? Any guesses? How do you start here? Let's say let's have some assumptions key. You can use React as your front end, Java as your back end, some random database like MySQL or MongoDB or whatever. So what is the first thing that comes to your mind here? This is the requirement, I want to build it.
We'll go with the data storage, designing on the
Mhm.
uh,
The database. Like,
Write a page. Okay. You mean
I like
the-
the database. Like we need to know what are the requirements, then what
Mhm.
are the
Mhm. Right. Okay. So two answers here. So one is we need to create a database or put data somewhere. So what is the data that you're going to keep here? Where is our data here? There is no data here. It is just straightforward requirement. There is no information here. So what we do is we as developer use you build a mechanism or you build a framework to structure the data in a very organized manner. Okay. So the first question, you don't start building anything here, actually. The first question that you need to ask is, what are the features of this customer? What features does he possess? Next, what features that does this pizza possess? And order is something which is an action. So how to perform this action, where to perform this action? And you have a very big term here, food delivery platform. It's a very big term. So it is very abstract, and with this kind of unorganized information or information which is very what you can say uh, which is very vague, you cannot build an application. Okay, so you need to think from architect's perspective. So normally a developer is different, an architect is different. An architect designs your application. Design in the sense, I'm not talking about the visual design, right? So designing the application means you need to build the data structure. You need to understand something called NFR. Okay, NFR stands for non-functional requirements. These two are very important. So let's break this down. So as an architect, what all you should think, and as a developer, what you should be concerned about, right? But if you say like, okay, I'm a developer, I really don't want to worry about this architect and stuff, then it's going to be tough, because in this current market, everyone expects everyone to be an architect. Okay, no managers, no developers, no consultants. People want you to be an architect or in a position to be an architect. So as an architect, the questions that you will ask yourself is, the first thing is how to build data structure here. And the second thing is, what is the NFR? What are the non-functional requirements? And of course, what are the functional requirements? I will strongly recommend you to understand this non-functional requirements. There are a lot. I'll give you some examples. So let's first go with this. First, address this question, how to build a data structure. So there is one method that I'm going to give you, which is called, so now we are talking about this person, how to build your data structure. So a simple tool that I'll give you here is noun-verb analysis. Okay. So now, what is this noun-verb analysis? How exactly to perform it? It's very simple. Whenever a requirement is given to you, so let me make it even more interesting. I will elaborate our requirement. So I'm rewriting it here. As a customer of, say, it's a tomato, for example, I want to view complete list of the food menu and be able to order pizza from selected from the can say be able to order pizza. Okay, let's stop it here. Okay, so that I can get it delivered on time and be able to. I'm just writing, so I should also be able to track the order and pay for it. So this is a user story. We call it as a user story. Okay. So two things here. I'm giving you to study or do some research by now. One is NFR and one is how user stories are written. Okay. So please go through this stuff. So here, what exactly your noun-verb analysis says is you need to identify what are nouns and what are verbs. Okay. So I'll do that here. Let me highlight this with green. All nouns go green. Customer is a noun. Very simple. Tomato is a noun. Complete list. Can I call it as a noun or a list? Food menu. Pizza.
It's
And should also track the order. Order. Yeah, these are nouns. Did I miss anything? No. And next I have the verbs. I need to identify the verbs here. I want to view. View is a verb. Be able to order is a verb.
order,
I need to perform an order.
deliver,
Delivered on time. This could be this is a verb.
then
To
track
track.
the
To track and
pay for.
okay. Now people whenever you start programming, no one teaches you they about this actually. They directly jump onto classes, properties, functions, and all this, and we'll get bored. So this is the way they should start. So when you look at programming, the first thing that you learn is your data types, right? Data types. Then take any programming you would have studied in your college. Data types. They want you to learn about the syntax, functions, classes, and all that, right? So now, how to use that knowledge to solve this problem? So what you essentially do here is all these nouns that we have, these are our classes. Okay, these are our classes. Why you should have a class? And first of all, what is a class? See, when you are building a scalable system, by scalable system, I mean, obviously, you don't build an application for 2 or 3 users or 1 user, right? So, and moreover, these are not desktop applications. We are talking about, or you will end up working in those projects which might have like some thousands of users sometimes if it is a B2B platform, or if it is a B2C application or a platform, you will end up having some millions of users. So, whenever I'm talking about a customer, I'm not talking about a single person. I'm talking about a group of persons, a class of persons, right? And all these persons or all these people, all these customers in this case, will have certain properties,
Yeah.
features, right? So
Mhm.
customer is a class for me. Complete list of the food menu, or actually, we can just uh, cut it
Like,
down to just a food menu. These both are same. Food menu. Food menu is a list, like an array, and
yeah.
in each and in an array you'll have elements. So if you're talking about, so in a food menu, what will you have? You'll have a a dish, and again,
And its
a dish
price.
will have some qualities. Yeah. Nowadays, you are even seeing how many calories will this particular dish could have. So that is a property of the dish, and it comes
Yeah.
under a food menu. There, your arrays will kick in. They are going to help. And when you are talking about the quality of the food, or the properties of the food, or the properties of the customer, you call it as an object, right? So let's go step by step here. So whenever you're talking about a customer, let's say I have this customer, I could have some, infinite amount of features about a customer, but I'm not bothered about all of it. I don't want to know the who's the boyfriend of this customer or who's the girlfriend of this customer. Probably, yeah, they are tracking now, but anyway, I'm really not bothered about it on a food delivery platform. I'm just concerned about what is his location, how many addresses he possesses, home, uh, work, and all this. So first of all, I'll have a name for this guy, right? And
Yeah.
so there are n parameters, you know it already. I don't want to bore you with it. Okay. And then when you talk about your food menu, you cut it down to a dish.
Or like we can divide it as veg or non-veg. Is it like that?
Yes, yes, yeah, of course. So you'll have a dish again, and this dish belongs to a restaurant, isn't it?
Yes.
So when you actually, probably I would have added some term here like food menu in a restaurant I can add. So you'll have a restaurant class. So all these terms that you got, or all these nouns that you got, those are classes. And understanding a class is very important for us. Okay. So likewise, you will have multiple classes here, and you need to define each and every class. So whenever a requirement is given to you like this, the first question that you need to ask is, what is my data structure and how am I going to create this data structure? So you go back. So now you are not a front-end developer, okay? Don't think you're a front-end developer. You're just creating a data structure. That's it on your computer, which is having some battery, which is having some internet connection, and you're just making some data. That's it. Don't think about anything else. So if I want to make this understand properly to a computer, my computer wants to understand about this customer. So there is a certain rule that you need to follow. You need to, and those rules are nothing but your programming syntaxes, or,
Syntax.
or, or your programming syntax. So what I'm saying is, see, Mr. Computer, I have a class called customer. Okay. And this customer is going to have few properties. Property number one is name, and he shall have some ID, because in your system or in your application, you should identify him with a name. And also, and this name is generic. Two people can have the same name, but I need to have a unique identifier. That is common sense. I need to have a unique identifier to identify this guy. who exactly this guy is at a certain instant. Likewise, you will have location. Again, this location, when you talk about a location, it is just not a single string or a single line, right? So you need to store what is the latitude and what is the longitude, or probably whichever format your Google Maps is going to give you. Of course, it's a very, again, that's a very huge information. Let's not dig into it. But here, again, your location can be broken down to, it will again have two qualities like latitude and longitude. And likewise, he will have some address, or probably you can call this as a primary location so that you can spam him with ads. And this address or addresses will again have, we can have multiple addresses, isn't it? So I can have address number 1, A1, let's say. See, I'm using square brackets because this is the syntax of an array. We will come to the syntaxes and all, don't worry. So address number 2, address number 3. And again, each and every address will have number, street, pin code, whatever. Likewise, you'll have multiple other parameters. Okay, what are the parameters that this customer could have? And now, this is your class name. These are all your properties. And then, see, we just talked about a class and properties. We were talking about nouns and all. But how about these verbs? Okay, so a verb in terms of programming is a function or an action that you want to perform or someone is performing. So here the customer wants to view. So there is an action associated with this class, and who wants to view? Customer wants to view. So this class could have some actions as well. This person can perform some actions. You can call them as actions. You can call them as methods or functions. Okay. So your class can be having two things. One is props or properties, and the other thing is functions. Okay. So this particular concept that we discussed, or the theory that we discussed, does it vary with programming languages? Yes or no? This concept or this theory, does this vary with programming languages? Let's say I want to build the same system with Python, JavaScript, Python or JavaScript or React or
No.
.NET or whatever. Does it vary?
No.
No, because this is reality. What you're doing is you're observing the nature, and whatever you're seeing, what are the actions that you're performing, you're just translating it into a theory to make your computer understand and to prepare something called data structure. So this is common. So whether you are working on Java or JavaScript or whichever programming language it is, this doesn't change. What changes is the extra properties or extra features that you get. In Java, the way you write a class is different. In JavaScript, the way you write is different. So you don't need to spend much time on these syntaxes. What you need to understand is how are you going to write a function. So for example, I'll tell you a little complex scenario here. Now, as I told you, there are multiple classes here, right? Let us say I have another class called menu, food menu. This is also a class or an array, you can say, or let's say dish. Now the question comes is, okay, you told me that you can come back to me and say, okay, you'll have class properties and functions. Pretty good. Now I have a action called view. Shall I put this function in a class called customer or dish? Because it is associated with both of these, isn't it?
Yes.
It belongs to both. That is where, so this is a confusion now. Where shall I keep it? And should I follow any rule to keep it? Or can I write it anywhere? Or can I say that, okay, so customer is a class and I will write this function, or I will associate this function with this guy. And someone comes and says, okay, dish also belongs to view because I am viewing the dish. It is close to it. I can write it here. So there are a set of rules that you need to follow in order to choose which one is the best. And those are your OOPS concepts and solid principles. These two are important for us. We'll dig into those specifics. These are a little complex, but yeah. So how to decide where should I keep a property or how should I write it? And sometimes if you observe closely, can I call this address as another class? Because it is a noun, isn't it?
Yes, and it
It is another
contains
class.
some problem.
Yeah. And if you dig deeper, address is a very huge information. Customer, it is even bigger than a customer information sometimes. What if on Zomato, I end up adding, I'm a very, very rich guy and I always order online. I travel the whole year. So you could have users like these, isn't it? You could definitely have
Yes,
users like this. So, and you don't limit your customer and go and say, see, you can't move. So we have a limitation in our system. You can't travel and order. We are not going to. So there is that feature doesn't exist. Those kind of businesses or applications, obviously, it doesn't make any sense. So you should allow your guy. So sometimes your address could be a totally different class altogether, right? So the relation between classes, how classes are connected with other classes, and how functions are connected with these classes. How do you choose to put which function in what? How do I decide? And what are the best practices here? These are all governed by these two guys. Got it now? So this is the first place that you need to begin with. Any questions till now?
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So I'll show you little syntax. Okay. Let me just give me 1 second. Let us go to the doc. Okay, you're able to see the whiteboard, right? Let me share my screen. I'll show you something. I will make you get used to this documentations. These documentations are important. Okay. You're able to see my screen now?
Yeah.
yes,
So this is your React, and the first thing that they're saying here is a library of web and native user interfaces. So as you know, this is a part of, I don't want to use complex terminology here. So React is a very advanced version of JavaScript, or sometimes you can call it as, a part of JavaScript, which is very enriched to make it more fancy. JavaScript, which is enriched. That's it. Okay. It is not, you can't say it is bigger than JavaScript or more advanced than JavaScript. No. So Facebook wanted to figure out what is the best way to make the user interface more, appealing for the customers, and they built something for themselves, and they started using it. And obviously, Facebook got very limited engineers, isn't it? They can't recruit the entire world to work for them. So they make it open source. That's what these companies do. They bring a technology, they put it open source so that other developers can work on it, enrich it, uh, and start working on it, create some magic. And again, Facebook uses the same and create their own magic. That's how it works. It's a very huge business, obviously. So as soon as you go to this, I strongly recommend you to, of course, there are a lot of other blogs where you can go learn React in the initial stages, but uh, this documentation or the official documentation is very important. The reason is um, uh, these kind of frameworks are evolving like day by day. You never know when a new version is going to come. Okay, so you should always stay updated. And these blogs that these people write, they are not always updated. Sometimes there are a few people like me who got some work and they just don't update it, or you'll end up seeing those pages which are frequently visited, right? So that's what you get on your Google, right? So but you don't have these updated syntaxes elsewhere, so you need to come here. And not only just React, any framework, whether it is open source or licensed, always go with the official documentation. That's my strong recommendation. So if you go to the reference, okay, what happens is they'll first scare you. They just directly jump onto something that you don't even understand. That is the problem. Okay, and this happens when you go and start learning on YouTube. The first thing that you need to understand here is, let me just show you something. See, and you know what? This documentation got updated like anything. Let me just go here. Acha, there are only hooks. Even it's been a long time for me to, look at this one. The UI is completely changed. Where are these class components? Okay, anyway, let's look at this here. Look at this piece of code. The first thing here is, let's break this down, okay? I have a class called greeting, and I'm saying it extends something called a pure component and render something. So render is referring to this part, okay, which is in the curly braces. And you're saying that this class is this, which is in the other curly braces or the outer curly braces. And you have some HTML here, this h1 tag, you see, some h1 tag is here, and you're declaring a class and you're extending it. Now, what does this mean exactly? Is there is something called extension or a class extension. So what does it, how does it make any sense? Is that, let us say, let's go back to the same example that we have. The property of a dish. Okay, you take a dish, and now I want to uh, add a new field or a new class called flavor, or the type of flavor, whether it is, or you can say the type of dish, right? So the type of dish that you have is basically an extension of your dish. Would you agree? It's an extension of it. So it will possess the properties of a dish. And in addition to that, you will basically have a new parameter called type, whether it is Chinese or Indian or North Indian or South Indian, something like this. So we are talking about one feature, which is called extensibility. You have a particular class or you have a certain person or an element, and if you want to extend or give more power to them or use them, right, use those properties, then it is called extensibility. So this extensibility is very common in your frameworks like React. So what exactly happens here is, whichever features that are there in your JavaScript, right, and those features that you have, they are very conventional. So JavaScript by nature is a very old language. It was there from like some lot of years, right? So it is just made to, show something on your screen. That is the only function of it initially. So when the applications got bigger and bigger, whenever someone open a tool like Facebook or some application, you end up doing multiple activities. You end up seeing, you do multiple actions like clicks, number of clicks that you do, the amount of data that you are giving to your application. So all these actions your JavaScript cannot handle alone. So what these guys did was they extended all the properties of JavaScript, took everything from JavaScript, enriched it, and created a new way of programming where you have, basically they extended all these properties, whichever JavaScript does possess. Okay. Now, what we will try to understand here is, the first thing, let me just go back to the whiteboard. I want to just set a context here. You're able to see the board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
See, just before going there, you understood about these classes and all. We'll come back to that. But before trying to understand it, let us understand web technologies as a whole. Okay. So I spoke about this in our last class. Of course, this is the second class, as Suzanne is also here. Let's just set the context and go back to our discussion on classes and groups. Okay. We'll continue this class for the next 20-25 minutes and then we'll close. So, few things that you need to understand. One is your HTML, JavaScript, CSS, React.js, or frameworks. You need to be very clear on this terminology. See, whenever you talk about HTML, you're just talking about the way you show the information or the way you structure the view. You can also structure the view. Okay, it is just the view, how you're seeing it. And it just adds some cosmetics to your skeleton or your HTML, right? So if you want to show a rectangle, you, with your HTML, you say that, okay, I want to insert a rectangle here. The color of the rectangle is given by your JS. And if I want to move this rectangle here and there, I'll be using JavaScript. The functionality is given by your JavaScript, or the logic is given by JavaScript. Okay. We'll come to this React later. But I'm talking about functionality, I'm talking about cosmetics and view, but how are you going to make data? See, I'm talking about those times when these web apps doesn't exist. Okay. It was a time when, let's say, before 2010 or before even we got proper internet, how things were. You need to understand that first. Okay. So just to show the information or design the information on a web page, these technologies were used. These are this was the conventional way of using JavaScript. But there was no feature in JavaScript which helps you to create data. There was no feature initially. Okay. Then what people thought was, guys, 1 second. Is my screen visible now?
Yeah, it's really.
Okay. But there was no facility to create information here in JavaScript. So ideally, when you look at any system, any software system or an application or a software which is working over internet, you have these 3 boxes. You would have seen these multiple times in your career. You have your client, a server, and a database. Okay. Now, who's your client? A client is someone who looks at the information. He is very illiterate. He don't know anything. He don't know anything what is happening behind the scenes. He is very illiterate with programming and all this technical stuff. He don't know anything. So we need to make his life very comfortable. So this guy is a browser. And you need to love your browser. You should not stress it. This is the rule number 1 for a web developer. Don't stress your browser. I'll tell you what do I mean by that eventually. You have your browser on your machine, and the server is a person who gives information or stores information in your database and brings it back. Correct? And the server gives your information to the client. This is how it works. Pretty clear, very simple. Good. Now the problem is with this JS, HTML, and CSS config, this combination, this alone cannot help you to build this whole system. Doesn't help. No use. So in those days, what they used to do is they have these programming languages. This term is important. I think Adit, you're already aware. When I'm talking about programming language, I mean programming language. I don't mean a scripting language. So Suzanne, just to make you understand, you have scripting language and programming language. These two are totally different. Okay. JavaScript is totally scripting. And there are a lot of other scripting languages which are there in the market. You guys can, go and check. But these two are pretty different. So this JavaScript doesn't have an ability to create data or play around with the data. And where do people normally play around with the data? They do it here. Play with data. They orchestrate everything here. Okay. Suzanne, you're able to see my screen, right?
Yeah, I can see the screen. Yeah.
Okay. So the place where you play with data is your server. But here, whenever you look at database, see, database is pretty simple. He's very stable. It doesn't move. Database doesn't move at all. Okay. So it is just table of information. That's it. A rack in a library. As simple as that. Doesn't move. It doesn't do anything. It's pretty static. But who orchestrates this data So in the initial discussion, we talked about create, read, update, and delete CRUD operations. So this person here, the server, is going to do these CRUD operations. See, you're doing CRUD operations means what? You're playing with your, let's say there is no server, remote server. Okay, on your computer itself, you're creating a document. Where does it go get stored? It gets stored in your hard drive or somewhere, some static piece of information, right? And who's going, if you want to see that information, delete that information, read it and update it. So there is some action that is going on, right? There are some functions that are playing around. And these functions are the functions that we talked here. And the props that we are talking about, these are, or the data that we are talking about, this directly goes into your DB. And this is your server. So whenever the name itself indicates it is something which is, it's like an action movie here. Some action movie goes on here. And action is being performed on what? On memory. And where does this memory stay? Where is it connected to? It is connected to your CPU. So if you want to play around, see, this understanding is very important. If you want to play around with your memory, again, go back to your 10th standard or even before, you have this basic diagram, right? Your memory unit is connected to your CPU. That is a, what do you call, a port or some static piece of information like ROM. And if you want to play around with this memory, you need to give some instruction. You cannot give instruction to your CPU because the CPU is very poor. It is just a piece of hardware. It is just sand. Literally, it is sand. It's made of silicon and germanium. That's it. So it doesn't understand what you're talking. It's not human. So essentially, you have an operating system between these two. You give these instructions to your operating system, and this operating system talks to your CPU. And this amazing person here is you, a developer, who give all these instructions. Now, you may ask me, why are you telling all this basic stuff? Because you need to have a language, or you need to have these set of instructions which directly talk here. But in this case, with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, in the old times, you don't have this ability to do this. You don't have an ability to talk with the CPU. So what they essentially did was they gave JS an ability to deal with data. And how you deal with data? By making it object-oriented programming language. They made JavaScript not just showing information on your screen, but in addition to that, they gave this an ability to perform object-oriented programming. And what is object-oriented programming? A programming which talks about your classes, props, functions, and the principles, the OOPS principles together. Okay. Now, is it clear now? The need of having classes and the functions are very important here, because whenever a client says something, whenever a client wants to perform something, these functions which are written in your server, and what is a server? Don't think server as a server. A server is just a small computer, that's it, with some Intel processor or some processor with huge RAM or some clock inside it. A computer. And this computer, again, talks to your DB. You write your object-oriented JavaScript in the server. Okay. So now there are two versions of JS. And again here, as we are talking about classes and all this code I mean, see, again, it's not that you should be using JavaScript only to build your server. There are multiple options. As Java itself is one of the biggest option. You can use Java, you can use Python, you can use what do you call Ruby on Rails, you can use JavaScript to build the server. But good thing here is this JavaScript works with any of these. You can build your client with your JavaScript, put your server on Java or Python, and you can use any database that you have here, MySQL, Mongo, likewise. Clear now? So it is up to us. But now what happened after the advent of something called, so initially you have client-side JavaScript. Initially you just have vanilla JavaScript or the basic versions of JavaScript. Then you have client-side JavaScript, which is just you to show things. That's it. Show things, hide things, move things on your browser. And then you have server-side JavaScript. Means what they did was they made your JavaScript to directly talk to your CPU. If you ask previously, that was not the case. Your JavaScript is understandable only to a browser, but not the CPU. And there are multiple layers: browser, OS, CPU. This was the case before. And then they made this server-side JavaScript. And the server-side JavaScript is your Node.js. Okay. So Suzanne, we already discussed about this Node.js. I would recommend you to go through and understand what Node.js is. So just to make things clear for you or make it simpler for you. So they took all the same syntaxes of JavaScript and everything and make it or converted it to something called C++. The person who converts it is Node or Node.js. So Node.js is a software who converts your JavaScript to C++. Why C++? Why not C? Why C++? Because C++ is object-oriented programming language. Your C is what? The C is what? What is the opposite of object-oriented programming language? Procedural. Stepwise. If you remember, when you write your C language, it is stepwise execution, back to back, right? But with object-oriented, you play around with objects. You can do whatever you want at whatever instant of time. So you convert it into your JS into C++, and C++ is easily understood. Of course, there is a lot of conversion happens here as well. Obviously, C++ is human understandable language. Again, it gets converted into assembly, hexa, then binary, then CPU understands it, and does your input output, all this stuff. So this is the background. So the need that we have, the need for doing this conversion or inventing Node.js is this. Because in real time, people are having problems like this. That is the reason. Okay. So, any questions till now?
No, good.
Is it clear? Okay. So, in few interviews, typically, they give you problem statements like this. And they will ask you, you would have seen some mock interviews on your YouTube or somewhere. You'll end up looking at these kind of scenarios where they'll ask you, give your problem statement. They'll ask you, how do you design, how are you going to design this stuff? Okay. So to understand that, you don't need to learn programming. You just need to understand the theory of system design. So this is called your system design. Okay. I'll give you a few takeaways here. So we discussed a lot. Of course, this is all basic stuff, but I'll just summarize a few key things that you need to go through, and you can watch any video about these, but you will, once you watch all these references, you will be easily able to connect the dots. Okay. Just look and don't watch these. You can go with any references, but I would recommend some YouTube videos or whichever you're comfortable with. Don't watch something which is more than 10 minutes. So system design is one that you need to understand. Non-functional requirements. This we discussed in the initial time, right? Object-oriented. Of course, I'm going to talk about object-oriented programming in a practical way. I'll show you how to code and all that. No need to worry. But to make the terminology more proficient for yourself, so you can just go through this object-oriented programming and solid principle. Just learn the purposes of these. I don't want you to deep dive into all this. You'll get confused. Just learn the purposes of these. Okay. So these are the takeaways from this class. Okay. So, but let me first show you some syntax and then we will stop there. Sorry, program extending this a little bit. Okay, we have 10 more minutes. Suzanne, do you need to drop? I think you're over time. You're good.
I'm good. I'm good. I have to log in at 150. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just give me a heads up. I'll then stop. Okay. Just 1 second. You're able to see the whiteboard, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, 1 second. I'm just showing you an example here, and we will make this a bit. Let me try to paste it here. Okay. I just picked it over internet. I want to just explain the syntax first. So here, can you write it? Yeah. When you have this, see, I'm talking about a user class. So this is how there are a few rules here. Your class name, the beginning name should be capital, and you have something called constructor, or you can even call it as a constructor function. So what exactly is this is your class will have few properties, as I said, right? Every class will have properties. A class that doesn't have properties means it is just like saying that you have an address and you don't have info of your address, or you don't have any properties of your address. Doesn't make sense, isn't it? So every class is associated with some properties. So to declare those properties, when you are initially, you use this function called constructor function. It basically constructs your class, and these are the parameters that go into your constructor class. So when you have a function, I hope you're aware of these terms here. These are called your function parameters. function parameters. Okay. And these are the properties that you have. Now you may ask, what is this? So this is a reference. The word this is a reference. You will eventually get used to it, but don't worry about this term this. It just says this name belongs to this person at this instance. I'll talk about the word instance because, see, whenever you're writing code, the code that you write, you need to look at it like a template. Your code is always a template. The data that plays around, that is your dynamic, or when you talk about a template, you can regenerate the template or you can use the template at various different contexts, right? So at one context, probably the person that you're talking about or the customer that you're talking about is one person, right? That is called instance. Okay, so this name is an instance, but the word this represents at this point, who is that guy? At this particular instance, it refers to that person. Okay, and there are various different languages, the terminology changes a little bit. Few use this, few use there are other keywords that they basically use. So you can explore other programming languages to do it, but here it is this. So this refers to the person or the class itself. Okay, and as I told you, your classes will basically have few functions. Okay, I'll show you one more example here. This is just an example code. Of course, we are going to write a lot, but yeah, I'll just give you the structure here. Look at this one. My restaurant class starts here and it is ending here. Okay, so the syntax of that should be a curly brace, just like your functions, and you'll have a basic constructor. Okay, this is like an index page for you. Your constructor is like an index page, and you will declare all the properties here. And then this is how you declare your methods. We were talking about actions, functions, methods, I told you. So this is a method or an action that you can perform on your constructor. I can display a menu of my restaurant. Let's take as a user, or let's say your user story is like this. As a user of the restaurant or of this application, I want to see the menu of a restaurant. Then you describe this function as display it. Your system displays it. So that is an action performing by your system. Forget about this part. We will come to that later. But yeah, this is how your function declaration goes. And this is how your constructor goes. So two parts got addressed. One is you have a class. You first write the props or the properties. And then below that, you write your functions. And there could be some, see, a restaurant, just imagine your food delivery application. Inside related to the restaurant itself, you will have some hundreds of functions. For example, you need to send money to the restaurant. Is it? You're going to, as a food delivery application, you're going to receive your money, receive the money from the customer. So as this company, you need to pay them. So restaurant will have its own properties. The payment method that they use, their account number, which platform they are using to do these payments, what is their location. So you will end up having some hundreds of parameters here. And likewise, you will have some hundreds of functions here. Okay, so that is how it is. So this single class can have some thousands of lines of code that you need to perform. So all the actions that are related to this this particular restaurant will come here. Okay. So this is one. And likewise, if you want to scale this, so 1 second, I'm showing you one piece of code. I'm unsharing the whiteboard. Let me throw some code here. You're able to see my screen? No, not yet.
Hello.
No, not yet.
Yes, Sudh.
Raymond, I have to leave the meeting. Like I have
Okay.
to log in. So
Okay, no problem. Yeah, we'll continue tomorrow. I think we are
yeah.
over time today. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll catch up tomorrow. Just go through the concepts that I mentioned. We'll catch
Sure,
up tomorrow.
sure. Thank you.
Cool then. Thanks. Thanks, Adit. Any questions, Adit, you have?
No, right. No.
Okay,
That's
we'll go through those. And if you have any questions, you can post it in the group. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.